What's up, guys? It's John Dominique, the Soul Proponent. Today I want to talk about finding out for yourself. When I talk about finding out for yourself, I'm talking about finding out the truth of the soul for yourself and seeing if God is real and walking the walk instead of just talking the talk. I do run into a lot of people who are skeptical, and that's to be expected. I don't expect anybody to just believe what I say based on my words. But I do expect, if people want to know for sure, that they need to find out for themselves. Some people think that they can use reason, they can use a debate forum, they think logic, they think science will do it. And that's fine. There's a place for that. But when it comes to actually walking the walk and finding out for yourself, you find that there's attachment. It seems like some people depend on these disciplines. As I said, science, logic, reason, thinking, the mind. There's a dependence. And a lot of times you won't see that dependence until you actually try to walk the path and see how bad that attachment is, how it disconnects us from the truth. And I don't know, people are always trying to give us ultimatums, like, theists, give us the evidence, give us the proof. Prove to me. It seems like they want something from outside of themselves to convince them, and it doesn't work like that. The mind, as I said, is a good thing. I'm not trying to throw away the mind, throw away the baby with the bathwater. We need the mind to survive in this world, and that's fine. But again, the problem is not the mind. The problem is the attachment to the mind. So finding out for ourselves is about seeing the attachments and seeing how that blocks us and keeps us away, how that's a barrier to finding out the truth. The truth sets us free. And it's just basic knowledge that any attachment is not the truth that sets us free. I don't think people understand the implications of that. People come to me with questions and ideas, like they want me to convince them, they want me to tell them what I experienced on my path, and then they want to know how I connected what I experienced to there being a God. And it's almost like turn that on its head, turn it upside down, figure it out. You think we need to connect something to a God. Well, why do you think we need a connection? Because ultimately, underneath that is a basic disconnection. We won't. So, and we've got logic and reason saying good, bad, right, wrong, weak, strong, big, small, connection and disconnection. And that's normal. The mind lives in duality. That's how the ego personality operates. That's one way to see things. But if we're going to walk the path and find out for ourselves, we need to see that that's not the only way to see things. It's possible that we can see things as underlying all that there is a connection already that's already there. And if that's true, then we need to figure out what's in the way. Why don't we see that connection? And it's almost a reversing. So it's a matter of where we come from and where we start. If we're going to start from this duality, there's a disconnection automatically. How do I connect my experience to a God? Well, we need to see that we believe in this disconnection. We believe that we're separate. We don't believe that there's a oneness, that there's a unity. Because that's the experience of what spiritual awakening makes us realize. That this duality, this tendency of duality that the ego operates with, where it comes from, is a barrier. And finding out for ourselves is to actually experiencing that and finding out how. So we can ask questions and we can inquire into why we believe there's a disconnection in the first place. So why would if you have to ask somebody, how do you connect what you experience to a God? Well, first you need to see and this is not coming from, I'm not answering your question. You have to answer. You have to go and do the work to do it. And it's a matter of going internally inside you and saying, well, why is there a disconnection in the first place? So it's a reversing and unlearning, peeling back of layers and seeing that the connection is already there. So as soon as we ask that question, it's almost like you've already lost the orientation, lost the attitude. And the attitude is important. If we're going to find out for ourselves about spiritual awakening, it takes a certain attitude, and the attitude of attachment is not it. If we're attached to someone needing to give me the answer from outside, that's where I need to get the answer from. If we don't want to walk the path for ourselves and do any of the work, we want someone else to convince us. Those types of attitudes don't work. And there's multiple issues with that because, we assume that the answer is from outside of us is one of the problems. The second one is, there's conditions and terms that need to be fulfilled before I can believe, before I can experience spiritual awakening. That's not it. That's not true. The only conditions and terms is that we see that there are no terms and conditions. That's the truth because it's already there. The connection is already there. So, there's a number of assumptions that a lot of people are making even before they start walking the path, and those assumptions are blocks. Even the assumption that you're a person, we have all these ideas, all these concepts. And the concept of an idea, a very unconscious concept, is that we're a person. And now that's fine. I'm not saying we're not a person. That's important. But the attachment to being a person is the crux of the problem. The truth is going to set us free. And we need to see that and understand that experientially, firsthand, directly. It's not just thinking about it, reasoning, and using logic to do it. That doesn't work. That doesn't do it. That can get us to a certain point. That can help us along the way. But at some point, we have to let go of all of our attachments and see these attachments and see the underlying emptiness that's underneath it. And then that emptiness, something will be there to show us, to guide us to the unity. And that emptiness and that unity, the emptiness is a place for that unity to appear. But people want to use that emptiness and judge it as bad because the tendency is to keep judging. They don't want to, and that way to judge is a way to control things, and no one wants to let go of control, So we need to see more, that there's more attachments, to find out for ourselves if God is real, if there's a spiritual awakening. We need to uncover all these attachments, all these unconscious attachments that we don't really think about. So fundamentally, there's a disconnection between, the human, the conventional way of seeing things and the spiritual way of seeing things. Spiritually, there's oneness. There's indivisibility. And if we don't see that, we can't be convinced of it in our minds, in our heads. There's no theory that I can propose to you that'll convince you. It's more of, I can provide a way for you to experience the truth for yourself. And if you're not interested in that, then I don't have any business talking to you. We don't have any business. Why would I continue? And that's one of the things I want to talk about here as well, because that attitude of not wanting to do anything about it, not wanting to go see for ourselves, automatically I'm just wasting my time. If you're not interested in finding out the information, getting the tools and using the tools in your own experience to find out for yourself, that's the way, that's the path to spiritual awakening. You can't just sit back and try to get answers from someone else. It doesn't work like that. So yeah, this starting from this place of disconnection, it's a good starting point. And that's where a lot of people start. And, it could be painful, but to see that and just to know that that's a starting point, some people will double down on their attachments so they can avoid it even further and come up with rationalizations, hundreds of thousands of ways to think their way through it, try to think their way through to spiritual awakening. That doesn't work. It just increases the attachments. It increases the perceived disconnection. It just doesn't work. So, if we want to find out for ourselves, there's a long path. It's a long, arduous process. I'm here to guide people that really want to know. You have to be really thirsty. You almost have to hit a rock bottom and have to have a certain mentality, a certain attitude to even begin to do it. I think that's important to say because it's misunderstood. The whole path is misunderstood. People have their judgments and they have their reactions, and then they have their attachments, and no one really understands the path to the soul. And, the soul is so important. It's who we are. It's the true identity. It's the oneness, a unity, a healing, and the feeling of our own self-worth is embedded in this spiritual awakening. And without it, we'll always feel like there's something missing. And there's a lack of self-esteem and a lack of self-worth, and that really people don't know, but on an unconscious level, that really affects humanity detrimentally. And then we pass that on to the future generations. So I'm saying that, this kind of stuff is not light. It's not like people don't take it seriously enough, to be honest, in my opinion. But this is important stuff to me, and that's why I'm kind of here talking about this kind of stuff. It's not like we can just dismiss this information and not do anything with it, because that's what happens. Some people just hear it once or twice and then they end up just going right back to the way they were, and it gets covered up and they forget about it. And this takes prolonged, sustained, continuous effort. That's how the path works. But we need to see for ourselves. I can talk about this, and it's easy to just talk about what I experienced or what other people experienced, but to actually do it yourself, to see what it's about, and to go firsthand deeply into it and see for yourself, that's where the meat and potatoes are. Because the words don't do it. There's no amount of words, there's no amount of books, there's no amount of whatever other people are using to try to get to spiritual awakening. It's an experience, direct, firsthand. There's a connection. This perceived disconnection is one of the issues that these people come up to me and ask me about. And also, there's also implied in the idea that, someone needs to prove to me that there is a God, that there is spiritual awakening, that there is heaven, all this stuff. Coming from that type of attitude, also the problem with that is that there's a sense of incompleteness automatically. That's where we're coming from when we ask for type of proof and evidence and something to show us. That's not it. If we don't see that we're coming from incompleteness and deficiency, we won't ever be able to walk the path, because we're not accepting the entire truth. So the ego identity, it's trying to avoid the sense of feeling incomplete. And it doesn't know this on an unconscious level, but that's why it doesn't want to walk the path, because it knows that the vulnerability and the worthlessness, it doesn't want to go through and feel that anguish of its incompleteness, the feeling of being incomplete. So feeling disconnected brings a sense also of not feeling complete, and that's painful, on an unconscious level. And we go all our lives like that, and people don't want to go back and see all the situations in their lives where that's affected them, and how badly that scars us and the next person, and then we pass those scars on to the next person and walk around acting like it's normal. That's not normal, guys. We think that's cool, to just allow that, we think it's okay for it to just be passed on to the next generation and on to the next generation. You got that from your father, got that from their father, got that from their father. That's not, you're passing on more poison to the people that are going to come after you. Why would you do that? Your own child, and then your own, we come from this earth and we're all connected as one. If we don't see that connection, that's a problem, because we don't see that we're hurting ourselves. So, that connection piece and the part of feeling incomplete is they're interwoven into each other. And that incompleteness is also a huge barrier, because we become attached to avoiding the incompleteness. That's a problem. And we don't know. See, most people, that's not a thing we think about as we live our lives. We live our lives basically trying to find pleasure, trying to find a sense of completeness. And the reason is because underneath that, there is a feeling of being incomplete. And it takes an honest person to really see that and to feel it deeply and to take it as a way of an outlook, as a lifestyle, basically. And you have to be very sincere and you have to be very willing and ready to do it. But the people that I run across, that demand evidence, that demand proof, reason, some type of theory, they don't have that attitude. They have the opposite attitude. All their theories, oh, there's no God, you can't prove it, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's almost like they don't want to actually walk the path. And you can tell on an unconscious level they don't want to, because that means it's a potential loss of everything they've been hanging on to. And nobody wants to lose their identity. It's very difficult to do that, especially with the environment around us. Like, there's no support for doing it. The surroundings seems like you'll get torn up to pieces. Like, the dogs are going to eat you alive, basically, is what it feels like. And the ego personality starts shitting a brick. It doesn't know what to do. It starts thinking furiously, and it can't stop the thinking. The thinking increases and it makes things worse. That's part of the process. We have to allow that to happen, but few people are willing to do that, because it's scary and it's overwhelming. And to consistently do that, like once or twice, people might just do it once or twice, but they'll forget about it because there's other more important things. Their priorities are mixed up. But, I talk about all this, but, finding out for ourselves is what this video is about. And what I'm trying to say is that we need to find out all this information for ourselves. I can sit here and talk about it and, yeah, it's true. The theory sounds nice, the soul is born pure, virgin, miraculous, buried and rejected, yet lives forever. But to actually have an experience where you actually come away with that knowledge, as there's a oneness, and you become the oneness. You are the oneness. So how can you even ask the question, how do you connect this experience with a God when there's already oneness? You can't. It's almost like a reversal. Like, you can't not connect it. The connection is already there. It's always been there, but we need to reverse it and see what's in the way. That's an important thing that we need to see. A lot of people, at least the people that I run into that are skeptical, and also this completeness, also, like, you feel incomplete or whatever because of that disconnection. Then you say, oh, there's no God. Well, the reason you say that is because you feel incomplete. You know that there's something there that's missing. And if you're honest about it, you'll find out for yourselves, So I'm just here to help people who are really actually looking. And there's very few, very few people have the attitude, that I run into that are sincerely looking, trying to find, trying to walk the walk instead of just talking the talk. So that's my attitude. That's my message today. Our attitude is very important. The way we approach spiritual awakening. We need to find out for ourselves. John Dominique, the Soul Proponent.